On Mother's Day, my son gave me a small box. Smiling, I opened it, and my heart stopped. Inside was a plane ticket. "Where am I going?" I asked. My son smirked, "To a retirement home. You'll love it there." My husband laughed, "We thought you'd appreciate the break." My hands trembled as I whispered, "This isn't a joke, is it?" My son smiled coldly, "No, Mom. It's time for you to move on. I've been a devoted wife to Robert and a mother to our only child, Daniel. We lived in a modest home in the Chicago suburbs, a place filled with memories of family gatherings, laughter, and love. I dedicated my life to nurturing our family, ensuring that both Robert and Daniel had everything they needed. Mother's Day had always been a cherished occasion in our household. It was a day when Daniel would surprise me with heartfelt gifts, and Robert would cook breakfast, filling the house with the comforting aroma of pancakes and bacon. But this year felt different. The morning sun streamed through the kitchen window as I set the table for our traditional Mother's Day brunch. The clinking of plates and silverware was accompanied by the distant chirping of birds outside. Robert sat at the head of the table, engrossed in the morning newspaper, occasionally sipping his black coffee. The atmosphere was calm, almost too calm. Daniel arrived shortly after, carrying a small, elegantly wrapped box. His smile was polite but lacked the warmth I was accustomed to. "Happy Mother's Day, Mom," he said, handing me the box. "Thank you, sweetheart," I replied, touched by the gesture. I carefully untied the ribbon and lifted the lid, revealing a plane ticket nestled inside. Confused, I looked up at Daniel. "Where am I going?" I asked, attempting to keep my tone light. Daniel's smirk deepened, a hint of something unsettling in his eyes. "To a retirement home. You'll love it there." I let out a nervous chuckle, glancing at Robert for clarification. He set down his newspaper, a faint smile on his lips. "We thought you'd appreciate the break," he added. My hands began to tremble as I clutched the box tighter. "This isn't a joke, is it?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. Daniel's expression turned cold, devoid of any affection. "No, Mom. It's time for you to move on." The room seemed to close in around me. I felt a surge of emotions, confusion, betrayal, and an overwhelming sadness. "But why? I've taken care of this family. I've been here for both of you," I pleaded, searching their faces for any sign of remorse. Robert sighed, rubbing his temples. "It's just, you're getting older. We think it's best." Tears welled up in my eyes. "I don't understand. Have I done something wrong?" Daniel crossed his arms over his chest, his stance firm. "It's not about that. We have plans, and it's time you had your own space." The weight of their words pressed heavily on my heart. I had sacrificed so much for this family, and now they were discarding me as if I were an inconvenience. That evening, I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the half-packed suitcase before me. Each item I placed inside was a fragment of the life I had built, a life that was now being stripped away. The walls of our home, once a sanctuary, now felt like a prison closing in on me. As I folded a worn sweater, memories flooded back. I remembered the countless nights spent comforting Daniel after nightmares, the meals prepared with love, the unwavering support I provided through every challenge. Was all of that forgotten? A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. Daniel stood in the doorway, his face unreadable. "We'll visit," he said flatly, as if that would ease the pain. I nodded silently, not trusting my voice. He lingered for a moment before turning away, leaving me alone with my thoughts. The following morning, Robert drove me to the airport. The ride was silent, the air thick with unspoken words. As we approached the terminal, he finally spoke. "This is for the best," he muttered, avoiding my gaze. I swallowed the lump in my throat, forcing back tears. "If you say so." He helped me with my luggage, offering a brief, awkward hug before leaving me standing alone amidst the bustling crowd of travelers. The flight was a blur. I stared out the window, watching the clouds drift by, my mind racing with unanswered questions and heartache. Upon landing, a representative from the retirement home greeted me, her cheerful demeanor a stark contrast to my somber mood. "Welcome. We're so glad to have you here," she chirped, leading me to a waiting car. The drive to the facility was filled with her enthusiastic descriptions of the amenities and activities available. I nodded absently, her words barely registering. Arriving at the retirement home, I was struck by its pristine appearance. The manicured lawns, the modern architecture, it all felt so impersonal. I was shown to my room, a small but comfortable space, devoid of any personal touches. Days turned into weeks. I went through the motions, attending activities, making polite conversation with other residents. But an emptiness lingered, a void that couldn't be filled. One afternoon, while sitting in the common area of the retirement home, something strange happened. There was a new resident. An older man in his late 60s, maybe early 70s, wheeled in by a nurse. Tall, slim build. He had a deep scar along the side of his neck and walked with a cane. He looked familiar. Too familiar. I froze, teacup halfway to my lips. It was Peter. Peter, from before Robert. My first real love. We were young, reckless, passionate, and we ended badly. He left me without a word one summer, and I never saw him again. I eventually moved on, met Robert, got married. I thought Peter had vanished from my life forever. But here he was. Looking right at me. "Anita?" His voice cracked a bit, like it hadn't been used in days. My stomach dropped. "Peter?" There was silence for a few seconds, until the nurse pushed him further in. He sat down not far from me. Neither of us moved. Later that day, he found me again in the garden. "I can't believe it's you," he said. I didn't know what to feel. Anger? Curiosity? Grief for the version of my life that could have been? "I never stopped thinking about you," he added. I wanted to walk away. I didn't. Instead, I asked, "Why did you leave?" His face tightened. I didn't. I was sent away. My father, he threatened me. Said if I didn't leave you, he'd cut me off and ruin you. It sounded ridiculous. But his voice, his eyes, they weren't lying. "I tried to reach you later," he said. "Your parents told me never to come near you again. That you had moved on." I didn't know what to say. I didn't know who to believe. My parents were strict, yes, but would they really do that? I spent the next week going over every memory from that time. Small details resurfaced. My mother's cold responses when I asked about Peter. My father's dismissive shrugs. Had they hidden letters from him? While I tried to process that, something even worse happened. One of the nurses, her name was Carla, came to me with a concerned look. "Mrs. McMillan," she said, "your son called. He asked to move your room to a smaller unit." I blinked. "What?" She nodded. "He said it's too expensive keeping you in the current space. He authorized the downgrade and wants to cancel your physical therapy sessions." My blood ran cold. This place wasn't cheap. I knew that. But I had assumed Robert and Daniel were at least keeping up payments. I had no access to our bank info, Robert always managed the accounts. Now I was wondering if they were doing the bare minimum, or worse, using my funds. I asked to see my financial records. The manager hesitated but agreed when I insisted. What I saw made me sick. Robert had withdrawn nearly $20,000 from my personal savings over the last 6 months. Money I had quietly put aside over the years. Some of it was from my parents' inheritance. Some from my freelance writing years ago. The transfers were regular and quiet. No explanations. No permission. And then I saw the worst line item. A recent payment labeled, "Deposit, Venice property." Venice. Florida. I remembered Daniel talking about future plans and how Robert had always dreamed of retiring in a beach house. They were using my money. planning their paradise while leaving me here to rot. I sat in my room, shaking. Angry, humiliated, and heartbroken all over again. That night, I told Peter everything. He listened. He didn't interrupt. Then he said, "You still have time to take it back. Your voice. Your control. Don't let them bury you before you're gone." The next morning, I made a plan. I called Margaret. My childhood best friend. The same Margaret I hadn't spoken to in years but always trusted. She now lived in New York and worked with a legal aid clinic for the elderly. When I told her everything, she didn't even hesitate. "Get me copies of your records. I'll handle the rest." And I did. Emails. Documents. Printouts. Phone logs. I even recorded one of the nurses confirming that my son gave orders to cut my care services. The twist? As I was compiling everything, one of the younger staff members, Jenny, approached me. She was always kind. She whispered, "You're not the only one. Another resident's daughter is doing the same thing. Canceling care, pocketing money." I realized this place, this so-called retirement paradise, might be full of people like me. Shuffled off by family and forgotten. With money being drained quietly in the background. And I had just found the crack in their system. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. And I wasn't done. A few days after I sent everything to Margaret, I got a call from her. She sounded more serious than usual. "Anita," she said, "I looked deeper into your financials. There's something off. Some of the accounts aren't just in your name." My stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" "Your personal savings account, it's been moved. Merged into a joint trust account under Robert and Daniel. You're not even listed as a primary on it anymore." I felt dizzy. "How's that possible?" She paused. "It looks like you signed a power of attorney document a year ago. Giving Robert control over all your assets." My heart dropped. I never signed anything like that. Not knowingly. Then it hit me. About a year ago, Robert came to me with a bunch of papers. Told me they were insurance forms, said it was to protect us in case something happened to him. I was tired that day, distracted. I didn't read them closely. I just signed. I trusted him. Turns out, that document was a forged POA. And it gave him full control of everything, my accounts, investments, even decisions about my living arrangements. Margaret said, "Anita, he used it to move your money, and then he and Daniel bought the house in Venice. They used your entire savings." I was shaking. And then something else clicked. Something I hadn't thought about until that moment. Robert's weekend trips. He always told me he was helping Daniel renovate the new place. But sometimes he wouldn't answer my calls. And when he did, he always seemed rushed. So I asked Jenny, the young staff member, to help me with something. I asked her to look up the address of the Venice property. I wanted to know who was living there. The next day, she came to my room, eyes wide. "Anita, you're not going to believe this." She showed me a picture on her phone. A real estate website, with a recent listing for the same house. Only it wasn't for rent or sale anymore. It was part of a vacation rental company. Robert and Daniel hadn't bought the house for themselves. They'd bought it to rent out, to make money. They were using my savings to run a business, profiting off a property in Florida, while leaving me here on bare minimum care. I felt sick. But that wasn't even the worst part. Jenny then showed me another post on a social media page. It was a photo of Robert. Arm around a woman half his age. Blonde. Big smile. Bikini top, drink in hand. The caption read, "Love of my life. Can't believe we finally have our dream home." Smiling face with hearts. #Venice-bound. My ears rang. It wasn't a business trip. It wasn't for me, or even for Daniel. Robert had moved on. He was having an affair. And he was using my retirement money to fund his new life. Daniel had to know. He wasn't stupid. He had to be part of this. He was the one who pushed the retirement home idea. The one who handed me that damn box on Mother's Day like it was a gift. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I called Margaret again. Told her everything. She said, "Anita, we're past legal aid now. I'm calling someone higher up. There's elder financial abuse here. Fraud. We're going to freeze those accounts and launch an investigation." I nodded. Do it. Then, out of nowhere, Daniel showed up at the home. He came alone, without warning. Walked into my room like nothing had happened. "Hey, Mom," he said. "Just checking in." I looked him in the eye and didn't say a word. He sat down, awkwardly. "So, how are things?" I still didn't respond. Finally, I asked, "Why'd you do it?" He blinked. "Do what?" "You know what." He sighed. "It wasn't like that. You're making it more dramatic than it is." I stood up. "You and your father stole from me. You gave up on me. You sold me out for a few bucks and a beach house." He looked panicked. "Mom, listen, Dad said you'd be better off here. You weren't happy at home. You were always tired, that's because I was working. Cleaning. Cooking. Being ignored. I wasn't tired of life. I was tired of being invisible." He rubbed his face, stood up. "I didn't want to fight. I just came to make sure you're okay." I laughed. It wasn't a happy laugh. "Don't worry," I said. "You'll be hearing from my lawyer soon." His eyes widened. "You're getting lawyers involved?" I nodded. "This isn't over." And it wasn't. I was just getting started. A week after Daniel's surprise visit, Margaret called again. Her voice had a sharpness to it I hadn't heard before. "Anita, it's time." She'd filed the necessary motions. The accounts had been frozen pending investigation, and Robert and Daniel were officially notified. The lawyer's office had scheduled a mediation meeting. It was going to be in person. Neutral ground, a conference room downtown, halfway between the retirement home and Daniel's office. I didn't sleep the night before. I packed every document, every screenshot Jenny helped me collect, every shred of evidence. Peter, oddly enough, helped organize it. He didn't ask questions. Just silently handed me paper clips and coffee. "I hope you burn them," he said flatly. So did I. The day of the meeting, I walked into the building with Margaret beside me. My hands were shaking, but I stood tall. Inside, Robert and Daniel sat on one side of a long table. Their lawyer sat between them. Daniel looked nervous. Robert looked smug. Robert opened with a sigh. "Anita, you didn't have to drag this out in public. We could have handled this quietly." I leaned forward. "You stole from me. Quiet doesn't cut it anymore." The lawyer cleared his throat. "There's a misunderstanding here," Margaret cut in. "No misunderstanding. Mrs. McMillan's accounts were merged without her informed consent. Her medical care was downgraded under direct orders from Mr. McMillan's son. And Mr. McMillan is on record using her funds to buy a property currently being rented for profit." The room went quiet. Robert's face twitched. "The money was for us. Our future. I've been supporting you for decades." I snapped. "Supporting me?" "I cleaned, cooked, took care of your mother when she was dying in our guest room. I raised Daniel while you were off at conferences. And you're screwing a woman who calls herself Sunshine online." Daniel's head dropped into his hands. The silence broke. "You're making this more dramatic than it is." Robert shouted. "You were always oversensitive, Anita. Always looking for betrayal where there wasn't any." I stood. Slid the folder across the table. "That's a copy of the forged POA you tricked me into signing." Here's your beach house rental. Here's your vacation selfies with your mistress. Here's Daniel telling the nurse to stop my therapy because it was too expensive. Read every line. Daniel finally spoke. Mom. I didn't know about the affair. I swear. I looked at him hard. But you knew what you were doing to me. You were okay putting me away, out of sight, so your dad could play house with someone else. Tears filled his eyes. I thought you were lonely. I thought you wanted peace. I shook my head. You don't get to rewrite what you did. You handed me a box and told me to move on Mother's Day. Robert stood up, red-faced. This is insanity. You want to ruin your family over money? Margaret said she wants to reclaim her life. The meeting ended with a formal agreement. The accounts would be audited. Robert was ordered to return the misappropriated funds or face legal charges. The POA was revoked. And Daniel was formally barred from making medical or financial decisions on my behalf. As we left the room, Robert grabbed my arm. You'll regret this. I looked him dead in the eye. No. But you will. The weeks that followed were strange. Daniel sent flowers. Letters. Even left a voicemail crying, apologizing, saying he didn't know how to fix what he broke. He visited the retirement home once, but I refused to see him. Robert, predictably, disappeared. The woman from the photos? She moved into the beach house with him. They started a short-lived YouTube channel called Coastal Bliss Life. It bombed. Comments were brutal. Someone leaked the legal battle. He eventually deleted it. Jenny, the nurse, hugged me when it was all over. You saved more than just yourself, she said. Peter and I grew closer. We had dinners in the courtyard. He helped me get back into writing, my first love before marriage, before kids. I published a short piece in a local magazine. They asked for more. One morning, I stood in the mirror and saw someone I hadn't seen in years. Not just an older woman, but a woman who fought back. I learned a few things through all of this. People will tell you who they are when they think you're powerless. Your voice is your weapon. Don't give it away. And betrayal? It doesn't end you. It wakes you up. I don't know if I'll ever speak to Daniel again. Maybe, in time, I'll forgive him. Maybe I won't. But I do know this. I was pushed out, forgotten, and written off. And I stood up anyway. I may have lost a family. But I found myself.